Hello, Superior YMCA. I am Jen, your Health and Wellness Director, and I am here with Jill and Ashley. How are we doing today, ladies?
Good.
Good. Good. I hope you guys at home are doing just as well. We have another wellness talk for you today. We are going to talk about to stretch or not to stretch. We've had that conversation quite a bit in our classes. I know a lot of people rush off to get home after class and kind of skip the last 5 minutes when that's almost the most important part of class. Two, we're just walking into the fitness room, jumping right on a treadmill and just going Mach 90 on there, again, being safe so that you don't get those injuries. We see that a lot. So we're going to kind of break down the benefits of stretching today, different types of stretching, and different versions of those stretching that you can do for different training methods that you're working with as well. So, ladies, do we like to stretch?
Mm-hmm. I do.
Is this like a go-to, like you would rather go to a mat and stretch than do anything else kind of thing? Like you're motivated to do that on your own at home? Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Depends how my body's feeling, but yeah, I think there's a natural like trigger to want to do that.
I love stretching. It's weird.
It's good. It's good if you love stretching. It's a great thing. I feel like I enjoy stretching once I get into it. It's kind of sometimes difficult for me to get motivated to go stretch because your brain is so moving and it's a natural way to calm yourself down and relax and slow down. So it's good that you're motivated to do that. I think in all of our fitness classes, we always do a little warm up and then we do a little mini stretch, nothing like super strenuous. We get into our workout and then our main stretch is usually at the end of our classes. And generally, I think that's what I see in the fitness room as well. People will do, come in, do a little bit of a stretching before they kind of get moving into their actual workout. And then at the end, I would probably say maybe 30% of the people I see in there go over to a stretching area to stretch. A lot of them just walk right out. So I have to say in the time that I've been at home, I have gotten outside and done some running. And in that, when I get home, I didn't stretch. I just walked right upstairs and took a shower and oh my goodness, I was so sore the rest of the day. So I kind of learned my lesson there. But making sure that you stretch, right? So that's kind of what we're going to talk about. There is two main types of stretching as personal trainers that we were kind of trained to go through. We have dynamic stretching and we have static stretching. We're going to kind of break those down in a definition and talk about some examples of those, where a good practice to put those into your workout routines would be. So let's start with dynamic stretching. It is the use of movement to stretch muscles before a workout or athletic competition. It relies on momentum to engage the muscles rather than holding a stretch at a standstill. So let's kind of go through some examples of that. Ashley, what would be some examples of like a dynamic stretch?
Like walking lunges, kind of like leg swings, making sure they're not like too crazy. And even doing like something like a quad stretch or a hamstring stretch, but just moving through the range of motion and then coming back up and then like switching sides versus like sitting there and holding it for a period of time.
Arm circles.
Arm circles.
Arm circles.
I used to be a swimmer, so we would do a lot of shoulder stuff this way and movement like that. So I think of those types of things. Most of the time in our classes, we do stretching, I would say, especially at the end, something that we hold, we stay within that posture. I think another good example for dynamic stretching would be like yoga flows, where you're actually moving through those positions continuously, would be kind of a good visual for that as well. Anything you want to add to that, Jill?
Nope. What Ashley said.
So then static stretching is a method of stretching a muscle beyond its normal limits, then holding the stretch for anywhere between a few seconds to a few minutes. This often is recommended as a way to stretch before like really vigorous workouts, which I don't normally do that stretch during a big, like those kind of styles before I do a vigorous workout. So again, going online and kind of finding your research or your textbooks that you have, you're going to kind of maybe get some conflicting information there too than what we actually do at the Y in our classes, but we kind of tweak it to what we feel is best and what we like to work with best. So there's no right or wrong, but so examples of like a static stretch. Jill, you want to hop in on this one?
Sure. Static stretch, that's kind of all I do is just hold for 30, so it's not really 30 seconds, more like 20. but just like your shoulder, just holding it, switching to the other side, stretching your triceps, grabbing your ankles, stretching out your quads and all that. Like I've got static stretching down.
Anything you want to add to that? Ashley, you want to add anything?
No, I think you made like a good point though. I know there's been a lot of controversy around static stretching in, our field for the last little bit. And I think people are more coming along the research of like what is more helpful, because there used to be not necessarily the debate of to stretch or not to stretch, but to when to stretch or what to stretch when, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And I think static stretching used to be a huge thing to do before working out, but they've kind of noticed that when you do that, especially if you're doing more explosive movements or if you're doing even like strength training, that now those muscles aren't activated as fast because you just lengthened them out. So now their reaction time is slower. So if you're trying to do like a heavier lift, your body's not going to contract as fast because you just stretched out your muscle for, that period of time. So I think like most of what we do at the Y is pretty much along the lines of what's becoming more standard, but there's still been, quite a bit of debate on before, after, this or that kind of a thing.
I think the one thing I've heard with like the static stretching is too, and it says right in its description, is stretching a muscle beyond its normal limits. And to do that before a workout, you're working a cold muscle too, is kind of terminology for that, is you don't have a muscle that's warmed up and as relaxed. And so when you stretch it past its normal limit, the likelihood of injury or pulling or straining a muscle is maybe a little bit greater.
Right.
Which is a good reason why we do like a warm up in class for like 5 to 8 minutes before, nothing super crazy, but just to kind of warm your body up. And then we do some of that static stretch, but nothing, again, still too strenuous before we work out. But I think that's my thing. I have seen, not to pick on anybody at the gym because I'm happy that everybody is there working out, but I have seen some very deep static stretching before people get on equipment, and I do kind of fear that injury could happen before they jump on that treadmill, because they're overstretching their quads by far, and maybe they walked there, maybe they did something else, but just on a first glance for me, I'm like, ooh, you're gonna hurt yourself. To each their own. It might work really well for them, so I can't judge by any means too. So yeah, anything else we're going to add on those? Like, do you have questions about that, like with personal training or within your classes before and after? Do any participants come up and kind of ask what is more beneficial for them or for what we're doing? If are they having injury issues? Do we kind of deal with any of that stuff?
I think, well, like kind of what you mentioned, Jen, with like seeing people doing static stretching for a long period of time, potentially like before they're doing their workout, like that's more where that dynamic stretching comes into play, because you do want to warm up your muscles. And like you said, in classes, we do a warm up to get our body temperature up, to get our muscles warm, to work through some of those range of motion things. But I think when we don't necessarily have that guidance right away and we just want to get into the gym, we want to get our workout done, and then we want to go home, we tend to like skip, either the beginning or the end piece, because that's not where we like feel like we're getting a good workout or like we feel the results. But I think too, like especially in more of like those like strength classes or like my kettlebell class, we always do some type of dynamic stretching, like within the warm up. So say we'll do like jogging back and forth, get our heart rate up, do some high knees, some butt kicks, and then we'll do like walking lunges or like walking side lunges, just to get your body ready for the motions that you're going to be working out, so that, like you said, injury even within the workout too is going to be less present. But I think a lot of people either skip it because they don't have time or they don't know what to do, or they're just kind of like don't see the benefit of it, because it's hard when like you don't really see, unless you're really focusing on the static stretching at the end, you don't see necessarily a lot of results, I guess, in terms of range of motion and flexibility. But I think too, it's another thing, it's like you can't expect to have results in like a week or a couple weeks
Yes.
or days.
Yeah.
It's definitely, like we've talked about with yoga and other things, like it's almost like a practice where you have to continually challenge your body, just like in gaining strength and endurance, keep pushing, that envelope to get to see those results.
Yeah, I think people are more, I don't want to, this might sound harsh, but more like misinformed, like about how important stretching is before and after a workout. Because I do feel like in class, I don't give it the attention that it needs, and I'm guilty of that, but I also focus on they're there to work out and we only have 50 or 60 minutes of class.
Right.
I can't spend 20 minutes on stretching, right?
Yeah.
So we need to be short and sweet, be effective, get the workout in, and then choose those, static stretches at the end that are going to best fit what we just did. But probably stretch for 20 minutes after every class to benefit our bodies better. But I think that we need to consider it a whole circle. It's full circle. It's a warm up, it's a stretch, it's the entire workout, it's a cool down and a stretch. And I know a lot of times too, we don't get that cool down, even that 5 minutes of like, we consider it putting your equipment away, like walk your stuff, put it away, that's your cool down. And in reality, that really isn't how it should be either. So I think maybe that could be kind of a challenge as for us instructors to try to add that importance and stress that, because maybe that would be knowledge that we could share and say, this is really important to you guys. So when you go into the fitness room, they still take the time to do the same format that we do in classes.
Right.
I mean, because I can take as my own experience from when I first started teaching, before I started teaching, and I was just working out myself, stretching wasn't like important to me, right? Like the workout was horrible. I was miserable. I wanted to get out of there as quickly as possible because I struggled so bad. And like when everyone was putting their equipment away, I just grabbed my bag and my shoes and I left because I was like, I don't need to be here another 10 minutes. This was so horrible. Like, just get me home. And that's kind of how my relationship was with it. And I know that some people leave because they have things to do. They have to feed their family. They have to go pick up their kids. They have to, and I always joke, like, do walking lunges to the car, or to the locker room, like still try to like stretch, because they won't stretch when they get home. That's just kind of nature of the beast, because I don't stretch at home unless I'm specifically doing yoga, really. So I think considering it a full circle workout, that like where you're sweating, where you're lifting, where your focus is in your workout necessarily isn't like the most important part. I think how you start and how you finish your workout is probably how you like seal the deal is the most important part within your exercise.
And that's like hard too. Like I know for me, like with shorter like personal training sessions too, it's like if we're only doing 30 minutes, like it's hard to justify like spending the first 5-10 minutes warming up and then the last 5 to 10 minutes stretching. And so, kind of having that balance of like, and I know some of our classes are shorter too. So like in that aspect of like really teaching and hopefully participants and members gaining understanding that like, hey, if it is a short class or this is a short session, like it would be really helpful for your body and for your goals if you would, take a few minutes, hop on whatever machine for a few minutes before you come, and then, take a few minutes afterward to stretch out those areas that we worked.
Yeah.
Because that balance is hard too, because you don't want to feel like you're gypping them out of the workout and they're like, well, I could just be stretching by myself. But it's like, yeah, you could, but are you actually going to do it?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. There's that discipline factor too, because
For sure.
we're very disciplined. I think, I shouldn't say we, I shouldn't lump everybody into that. I'm very disciplined in like a classroom setting. At work, at the Y, like I just know what I have to do because it's this relationship with like my job, like that I am very strict that way. At home, I'm not that disciplined. And I know we've talked about that too. And like my struggle to stay motivated here. But that's like training my brain too, to understand that the whole thing is just as important to spend the time and get that stretching, that warm up in. So I think now kind of moving on to like benefits. What are some benefits, Jill, that you have noticed with your routine of stretching and even adding yoga into your new regimen?
I don't get as sore when when I first started working out. I think I have that, not the next day, the day after that, I would be so sore I couldn't move, or I couldn't even lift up my arms to wash my hair. But I've noticed more and more as I stretch and yoga, I'm not as sore. Like, obviously when we do those, that leg challenge, that was a whole nother story. I was sore for a while after that, but I've noticed I haven't been as sore as I normally was, and like my flexibility and like range of motion have improved greatly. So noticing those little things kind of just keeps me wanting to stretch. And I know if I don't, and I like skip out of like, say a week or just even a few days of not stretching, and I go to stretch and I go to touch my toes and I'm like, I cannot touch the ground. Like, usually I can put my hands flat on the ground and like, but there's some days where it's like my hamstrings are just so tight that I can't even do it. And I'm like, yeah, maybe I should have stretched, after that workout. And just keeps me conscious of like, I don't know, my body and all that. It's helped me greatly, just stretching. And I tell Corey the same thing, because he's always like, oh, my back hurts. Oh, my legs are so tight. My butt. And I'm like, just stretch. Just stretch. You don't need a workout. Just stretch.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's going to take some work. But I've noticed for me, it's helped a lot greatly. Just flexibility wise, like not being as sore. So I really, really enjoy stretching.
How about you, Ashley? What kind of benefits has it brought you?
Yeah, well, I think for me, originally, like I've said a few times, like I grew up figure skating and I was not flexible at all. It was bad.
Is bad.
And there's certain things you have to do that aren't even like higher level things. Like you do a spiral, which means you have to get your leg up in line with your hip. So your foot from your hip has to be in one line if you're like tipped over. And I could not do that. So I could not pass the one level. And I was like, I don't know, like 8 or 10 or something. And so like I had coaches telling me that I really needed to stretch. And I like hated it at first because it was so uncomfortable. And I think that's like one thing that I know for a couple of my clients like deters them from stretching. Like it's so uncomfortable for them because they're so tight that like for them to hold that for 30 seconds is like excruciating.
Yeah.
I always have one client, she always tells me that I'm ripping her butt muscle because I'll do manual stretching and she's like, you're ripping my butt. It hasn't happened. It's okay. You have enough tendons and ligaments that won't happen. But I like that was so long ago that I can't remember like how long it really took me, but I do know that like the diligence paid off of like, stretching 5 or 6 days a week and then being able to like have a really good spiral, being able to do the splits on one side, like things that I never thought that I'd be able to do, even though kids are generally more flexible. Like I wouldn't say like genetically gifted in that area. So it was really something that I had to work on. And in order to do my sport, it was very, very important that I be able to do those things. And I think knowing too that like 80% ish of your flexibility can be gained and changed by what we do, and only like 20% or less is actually inherited, like kind of gave me motivation to try, because I felt like, well, my body just doesn't do that. But if you continue to work on those things, that they get better. And so that's kind of, since I started stretching at such a young age, has kind of been like ingrained in me. So kind of made it come a little easier, I think, as I got into my more teen and adult years. But I think it's also been like a huge, I don't know if I want to say like stress reliever, but just like a relaxation. Like I could sit in pigeon pose for like 10 minutes. Like it's so relaxing to me, like the tension that releases from that. And like there's some stretches that I don't love, that, like your body, you're like, I don't really want to stretch that area, but I'll do my minimum 30 seconds and then I'll be done. And then there's other stretches that, I don't know, for me, it's just like almost like a total body stress and tension reliever. And like Jill said too, helping with soreness. I notice that especially like when I've trained for races and things like that, because like I said, I do not have a runner's body and I cannot run more than 3 times a week without being extremely sore. Mm-hmm. And so making sure, like I've noticed that too, Jen, like when I don't stretch after a run and then the rest of the day or the next day, it's like, oh, poor choice.
Yeah, for sure. Hammies, super tight.
And calves for me, always from running, I always have super tight calves. And like, I just need to hang my, heels off the edge of the stair for like 10 minutes and then I'll be okay.
After I ran that day and I walked up the stairs to go shower, I was like, the first 2 steps, I was like, oh, why did I do that? And then, you get in a hot shower and you're like relaxed, you just you're standing there, you get ready for work or whatever. And then I didn't even think twice about it. I regretted that decision for like 4 days after. I was so sore. But I think like for me personally with yoga, adding that into actually teaching, almost 2.5 years ago now, I started doing that. So flexibility was huge. I'm not naturally gifted with flexibility at all either. So to notice my range of motion getting significantly better within some of those basic stretches with yoga was really encouraging for me. Range of motion within our exercises too, and like just easily to, I know we all justify how fast can you get up from a burpee, no one ever thinks about those things, but like tuck jumps, range of motion within my hips, things like that had improved so much. And I think that was just really encouraging to me too, to know that these really do work hand in hand and it benefits my strength and my cardio just does, that flexibility side. So, and you said too, like calming and relaxing, I think too, like yoga and meditation really do go like hand in hand, because you're and like what you said too, Jill, becomes more aware of your body. You become more in tune to like how you're feeling. You kind of quiet your mind of what everything else is going on around you, and you really just kind of internalize like what's going on with you at that time. And that's one thing I really like about stretching, because it is kind of a disconnect. Like you can just get into your own little world for a little bit. You feel the stretch, you focus on the stretch. And I think that is definitely a good like mental health thing too, just being aware of your body. Going through some of their other lists here that I thought were interesting that aren't things that I would readily think about. It increases blood flow to your muscles. So obviously that's a definite benefit, but that wouldn't be the top thing on my list, is like, what benefits does it give you? Well, it increases blood flow to my muscles. That's like a textbook answer, but it's still good information to have. Improves your posture. So as we're all sitting here like this and hunched over on our couch and in our chairs and stuff, I think that is huge, because we do see a lot of our active older population, maybe their posture isn't the best. It doesn't even have to be active older adults. It could be anybody that could have an issue with their posture. So, and I know we've talked about strength before, but like when you work one side of your body too much, it contracts and you'll end up getting really tight in one side. And if you really work chest or something, you need to have that balance per side. But that posture alignment will help with that flexibility. So once you've contracted something so much one way, you really need to stretch it out the other way so that you don't end up with a hunchback. So we don't want that. So making sure that, you do stretch, roll your shoulders down and back, and like instantly doing that right now in my chair and sitting up, like I can just feel that stretch through my shoulder blades, lengthening through my spine. It just naturally feels good. Nice and tall. I'm very short. If you guys have seen any of the videos or pictures, three of us are standing all side by side. I'm like 2 feet shorter than these girls. So, anything I can get like a couple extra inches is like a benefit for me. So nice, good posture. Helps to heal and prevent back pain. This is something too I think we hear a lot about in working out and stuff. So to know that it will help heal and also prevent is really cool. So really making that time to stretch. Great stress reliever and calming of your mind, which all were kind of something that we mentioned as well. And the other one too was to help decrease tension headaches. But I think we get tension headaches from obviously tension within our muscles too, and like around our neck and things like that. So if you're naturally loose and relaxed, it's probably obviously going to release some of that tension headache too. So a lot of benefits, and this is just like barely like the tip of the iceberg on benefits for stretching. We could go in depth on like how they're helpful for, more like chronic conditions too, like with arthritis or anything like that and moving forward. But on the basic side, like I almost think stretching is probably more important than your actual workout, honestly. So any other benefits you guys want to add that I didn't have on my list here?
But I do want to add, it did help with my posture too, because being so tall, like I always wanted to be shorter, because like when I was in kindergarten, I was like legit like a foot taller than everyone. So I always try to be, and I've noticed that like my head came forward, shoulders rounded, but now like stretching and I'm like, okay, I stand up a little taller. I'm like, I like that. I'm like, no rounded back, like the hunchback. So I've noticed that too with like my posture, and notice I don't have that much back pain anymore.
That's good.
So another benefit.
That's really good.
Yeah, I don't necessarily have anything to add, but I just like echo kind of what you're saying in that last part, Jen, with those different benefits. Like I used to work for a chiropractic clinic and did a lot of rehabilitation with patients, and stretching is like one of the biggest things that helped to relieve back pain, to relieve headaches, to improve posture. Like we did some corrective exercise, but honestly, like out of anything, if we could get anybody to continue to do anything at home, would be to stretch. And like, I don't know what percentage, but like definitely for sure, like majority of our patients that continued that at home, when they would come in, every like once a month instead of having to come in, every week, you could tell which ones were continuing to do that at home and which ones were kind of like, I'll just come and get adjusted and then I'll go home. But it's like, to help you stay in alignment and help prevent that pain, like you have to continue to keep, like what you said too, is, if you're tight in the front of your chest, like then now you're lengthening muscles in the back and now you're not using them properly. And it just has this whole like domino effect throughout your whole body. If your hips are tight in the front, now your pelvis is rounded, and like I could go on and on, but just like to think of all those little imbalanced things of like, well, no wonder you can't squat very far because this is super tight and this, which then changes where this bone goes. And now it's like we're, I don't know, starting from square one, trying to figure out why our bodies are so, I don't know, not misinformed, but
I worked with
not trying to do what they're supposed to do anymore.
Yeah, I worked with a massage therapist, and the one thing that he told me that kind of really stuck with me was that he worked alongside a chiropractor for a time being, and that they would do a massage and then they would do a correction, and then if they needed to massage again, they would, because the tight muscle can push out any of that correction that they've done.
Right.
They really do work hand in hand. And so that was kind of interesting to me because, that goes along what you're saying too, like get your correction, but then go home and stretch and make sure that you don't get too tight, because it was like almost counterproductive.
Mm-hmm.
So that to me is, I've never been to chiropractor, so I don't really have that comparison, but I can notice that difference, like how my body feels when I'm extra tight or extra sore, opposed to when I'm not. I'm walking more even, I'm walking taller when I feel like I'm loose and I'm stretched out. When I'm sore and I'm tight, it's very like almost like robotic movement. Like you can tell that my body is sore and doesn't really want to move. So I think, yeah, making that priority too. It's like a prescription. Make sure you follow. I kept thinking of the dentist when you said that, and I'm just like, never lie to the dentist that you like lost your teeth, because they know you don't when they see your mouth. So just like any other doctor, don't even tell them that, yes, I've been doing my stretches, because your results at the end will obviously prove that you're not doing what you should be doing. So
Right.
Take care of yourself, right? Excellent. Well, I hope this gave you guys some other information just about stretching and how important it is for you, and just different versions of stretching. And I know in class I don't use the term dynamic or static stretching. I'm very, I make it just logical explanation when we do stuff like that. But now when you hear those words, maybe you can kind of know, well, dynamic has more movement with it, where static stretch, I'm going to hold it for a little bit longer. And if you're reading it in articles or things like that too, we're seeing other things that are online for different workouts. Maybe you have a little better understanding of that. Yeah, if you guys have any questions or comments, please post them below. We'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you have, or just let us know if you've been adding stretching into your routine, or maybe if you've been home, it's been harder to kind of keep with that. Yeah, we're here for you guys for anything that you need to talk about. We look forward to seeing you again soon. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.